As much as I understand that even after a year since this show came to an end, this, along with other Cartoon Network shows, isn't going to save Cartoon Network regardless, and my optimistic positivity got in the way a lot, but to tell you the truth, knowing full well that this show has effort into it and the fact that it manages to get 3 seasons, and when people wanted an actual conclusion from this show, I can't diss out this show. It's never going to be part of my alternative regardless, knowing full well that even if I didn't watch all the episodes and I stopped binge watching it, I can tell that after watching the ending on YouTube, this show still deserves better, especially since that this episode alone is a demonstration of what this show can do when it comes to its creativity. I am fully aware that this show doesn't have a Halloween episode nor a Christmas episode, and it does have a Valentine's Day episode, but since that this episode centers around ghosts and I really need to fill in on my day slots of videos for this month, this is literally the only alternative I can get to when it comes to reviewing another episode involving Victor and Valentino. Granted, there may be other alternatives, but at the same time, this episode caught my interest for what they can do when it comes to ghosts. And believe me, this episode is a demonstration of what they can do involving ghosts whenever Victor and Valentino cause havoc, which was totally justified for their motivations against a bully who is taking over their treehouse. Although it doesn't change the fact that, like every other episode, there's always going to be chaotic consequences. Victor and Valentino were planning to reach in their treehouse only to witness Lupe taken over by knitting. And to tell you the truth, the fact that she knitted the entire treehouse, it may be rude towards the characters, but at the same time it's actually kind of impressive, especially since that she actually netted the trees by the treehouse. They were planning to go to the realm of the dead to get a ghost to scare the bully, but Archie denies that because of how complicated the ghosts are in the realm of the dead. But since this is Victor and Valentino, they decide to wear the maxes when Archie goes away. They find Paco, which is the perfect guy to scare the bully away from their treehouse, and when they succeed, it turns into disaster when Paco releases all the ghosts after taking the keys from Victor. And to be perfectly real with you, the plot of this episode centers around the realm of the dead. Well, it wreaks havoc in the real world. Sometimes what I said about this show being better than Quake of the Creek is mainly aspects like this, and yes, I've been watching Quake of the Creek episodes as of late, and I can understand it's being its own thing and it shouldn't be taking itself seriously, but at the same time, whenever I look at these episodes from Victor and Valentino, it really feels like that they're really trying to prove to everyone that it's having a world building that is supposed to be taking itself seriously in comparison to Quake of the Creek. And that's the fact that Victor and Valentino wear the maxes to see the realm of the dead itself, because as much as I understand that there's another episode that centers around a holiday in Mexico, which I'm going to be talking about on the final Sunday, well, I'm going to be reviewing the Consequences episode, but this episode showcases of what the world of the dead is when it comes to Victor and Valentino dealing with these scenarios. And since I talked about the episode where they go to the underworld, this world that is literally in the same location as where they live, unless if they wear the maxes, is an indication that the realm of the dead is a lot more different in comparison to the underworld. Because, to tell you the truth, the people in the underworld can still come back from the dead in the real world, but in the realm of the dead, since it's called the dead, not so much, considering that Valentino stated that these ghosts don't deserve to be sad while being in jail. And before any of you asks, yes, I'm fully aware that Victor and Valentino are the same type of characters that are causing havoc, like in other main characters who caused havoc in shows before, so that is something I can't defend this show, in comparison to Quake of the Creek, which characters don't do what Victor and Valentino do. Yes, I understand that at the end of the day, characters like Victor and Valentino are still kids and they always do these mistakes, which is mostly common. But considering that what I've witnessed involving the elements of what this show can do best that can overshadow the negatives, this is somewhat like Jimmy Neutron, except that Victor and Valentino don't do anything experimental when it comes to causing the chaos in the first place. As for Paco, the antagonist that shows resemblance of one of the antagonists from Danny Phantom and being in a bike game, which typical bike games are bad, I can't get over the fact that whenever I see Paco in this, is the fact that he's trying to find the love of his life, which is similar to the antagonist from Danny Phantom, even though he's always with the love of his life. But at the same time, this really shows an indication that he may return in a future episode, since that this episode is from season 2. Look, I understand that not every single character is going to have a return in the future, and when it comes to Paco's appearance in this entire episode alone, he is still typical when it comes to a bad biker person, but to tell you the truth, there's a lot more to work with when you have these traits in order to make a character a lot more interesting than they were from one episode alone. Though granted, when it comes to me making these videos for Halloween Mania, it's mainly me just trying to be positive as much as I can, because to tell you the truth, my positivity towards this show is still there, but at the same time, since that I knew full well that this show is never going to have a conclusion, since that it's being screwed by Warner Bros. Discovery, I'm really starting to have a difficult time on seeing what positivity there is when it comes to seeing the brighter things of this show, which really shows that people are having a difficult time getting into this cartoon, even after a year when it came to an end. And considering it's not considered a Cartoon Network classic right now, it's really more of how this show is literally one of the victims of not having a conclusion or being treated poorly, but not in the same levels as OKKO. But then again, Victor and Valentino ended up becoming one of the final shows that I binged watched 100%, mainly watching an episode to episode quickly as possible, instead of just slowing down. But to be perfectly real with you, thinking about Victor and Valentino and how that, along with other cartoons, has been disrespected by Warner Bros. Discovery, despite how annoying it is, it's worth mentioning, mainly the fact that I would have seen the potential from this if it didn't get disrespected. Granted, it was never going to be a hit, but at the same time, it would still continue nonetheless. Lords of Ghost Town really felt like an episode that made me appreciate this show, but it doesn't change the fact that what's happening in real life really drags this show down, even if it has some poor qualities that don't make it better in comparison to other Cartoon Network shows. You can argue that Craig the Creek is better, but at the same time, I'm just trying to be as nice as possible, knowing full well that Craig the Creek is the longest Cartoon Network show outside of Teen Titans Go. Well, it's managing to prove itself that it's trying to be a cartoon that is carrying the torch after Steven Universe came to an end, but to be perfectly honest with you, passing the torch isn't always believable, which is why I view Craig the Creek as mainly an average Cartoon Network show, even if it does have qualities that I appreciate the most. And the fact that I'm still doing that Steven Universe Craig the Creek crossover fanfic, even if it's taken me 2 years by this point to do more chapters. But what I'm saying is that Victor and Valentino, along with this episode, is affirming its identity if you're new to it. And to tell you the truth, this episode is a demonstration of what I see Victor and Valentino much more in comparison to Craig the Creek. I'm giving this episode a 7 out of 10.